everyone, and welcome to our webinar with Autism Partnership Australia on navigating fussy eating for autistic children. My name is Nicole Hurley. I'm the Head of Fundraising and Partnerships here at Autism Awareness Australia, and I'm also a parent of an autistic child who is a fussy eater. I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the Gadigal people of the lands that I'm speaking to you from. I also acknowledge the traditional custodians of the lands on which each of you are joining us from today, and may we pay our respects to elders both past, present and future. Joining me today is Karen McKinnon, a psychologist and the National Clinical Director at Autism Partnership Australia, who'll be providing you with practical, evidence-based tips and strategies to tackle fussy eating. Before we begin, we'd just like to run through a few housekeeping items. This session is being recorded for future viewing. If you have any questions during our Q&A portion or at any time, just tap on the Q&A button and type your question there. We probably won't have time to discuss all questions submitted, but one of our panelists will be in the chat and they'll be able to give you links and further information and support. And with all that in mind, let's get started. Karen, thanks so much for joining me today.
Thank you for hosting, Nicole. It's good to be here.
Oh, always happy to have you. Tell us a little bit about Autism Partnership Australia for those on the webinar.
Sure. So Autism Partnership has been in Australia since 1998, and we support children in their preschool years doing early intervention, and also primary school age children as well. So we sort of have three different departments of services. One is early intervention for young children, and then we have services for school-age children that are both in school and also home. And we have allied health consultation like psychology and speech pathology that runs alongside children of all of those ages. So we have an office in Melbourne, Sydney and Brisbane, and around 150 children that we have as clients at the moment.
Wow. Well, thank you for all that you do in our community. So fussy eating. When it comes,
here we go.
I know, we could be on here forever. But when it comes to eating concerns, because it is a stressful thing for parents around eating and fussy eating, how do you actually define fussy eating or problem feeders, and what causes it?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And I actually think, the way that we describe fussy eating or picky eating or eating problems or eating disorders is really sort of dependent on a few different things. I was really interested actually to hear from people joining us today. I think we have the chat function. So if you have a child that you would define as a fussy eater or a picky eater, please pop in the chat and let us know what that looks like. Interested to see what themes come up. I might just bring the chat up so I can see as well if anyone is adding their information in there. We know that around 90% of autistic children will have something related to their eating. Sometimes we talk about the big three, sort of eating, sleeping and toileting, but lots and lots of children have really impacted eating concerns and can be fussy or can sort of delve into actually eating disorder. So we know that it's a concern for many, and often it takes the form of restrictions or rules about food. So we haven't got too much in the chat, I don't think, but I might go through some of the examples. It's things like only eating certain colours or only eating certain textures, or having a range of foods and then restricting the number of foods, only eating certain brands of foods, only eating if the food is presented in a certain way or is the right temperature, or having some sensitivities and some reactions to foods as well. There's one comment here about a child who will only eat about 4 different foods and refuse to anything with texture or lumps or bits in it, and that's pretty common as well. So we sort of think about it as healthy eating habits and then picky eaters, where there are some restrictions or rules or things that, you have to work a little bit harder as a parent in order to help your child have a well-balanced diet. And then it can really spill over into disordered eating. And that's particularly around children if they are not learning and growing and thriving. So if you're seeing that your child is not gaining weight, or there's those sort of failure to thrive concerns, certainly time to get some support there. So we have to sort of define, is it just a preferences around the things that the child will eat, and with a little bit of work we can kind of help your child be a bit more accepting of different foods? Or is it actually to the point where it is needing some support and some specialist intervention? Another comment here, a 4-year-old child who'll only eat pureed foods. Seen that? I've got a little boy that I'll see this afternoon actually, and he's only having sort of yogurts and puree from pouches, and that's the only food that he'll accept. So that really worries parents. It's really concerning because you think about, your job is to make sure that kids are healthy and they get enough sleep and they get enough nutrients and they get enough fresh air. And it really worries parents when these things come up. The information that's on this page is from a really, really good website, SOS Approach to Feeding. We have a resource handout that will come after this if you would like it, and it has a link to that, and there is a really good training for families on that. It's about 2 hours long. It's free as well, but it's a really good place to start.
Thanks, Karen. So what causes all of this? So why do particularly autistic children have fussy or problem feeding?
Yeah, I mean, some of it sort of falls in the line of some of those, if you think of the diagnostic categories of autism, it's sort of social communication differences and then some repetitive and restricted behaviors. So sometimes it falls within that, but there are hyper or hyposensitivities sometimes with autistic children too. So we know that children can present with sort of different, the reason behind the picky eating can be different. So for some children, there are medical concerns where perhaps the palate or the jaw or the muscles in the tongue aren't as formed as well. And so children have a little bit of trouble with sort of chewing and rotating their jaw the right way, and swallowing can be hard. So there can be a medical or physical underlying cause for that. A lot of autistic children, it's a sensory, the sort of rejecting foods based on the way that they present sensorily. So that can be the smell or the look of the foods, or sometimes it's also just rules or habits or exposure to the food in the past that the child then remembers and didn't have a good experience with. So they've sort of formed a rule of like, no, I'm definitely not going to eat that. I know for my daughter, we went on a holiday in Queensland and she had a blueberry milkshake that she vomited in the car, and it's been about 7 years and she hasn't eaten a blueberry since. Yeah. So there's sort of some history with a food or rule around a food. It doesn't even need to be a bad experience. It's just a rule about what it looks like or what the child may or may not want to do. So I sort of think of it in those different categories, and we really do need to know the reason behind it, because we shouldn't intervene unless we've done some assessment of that. We really want to have a good sense of, if my child really is only eating pureed foods, can they actually chew? Can they bite food off at the front of their mouth and bring it to the back of their mouth in order to chew? If they are having some texture in their food, do they have the swallowing and gag reflex that they need to in order to be safe if they're going to explore different foods? So those are the sort of 3 different areas that I look at when I'm thinking about why is this happening?
Yeah, no, that all sounds so similar to what my son went through. So, like you said, parents really worry about nutrition and getting the right foods into our children. And if they're not eating, how do we even start to prepare them to eat new foods? How do we move them from purees to solids? What do we do?
Yeah, I think the first step is preparing yourself. So I think diving into eating without a plan, is fraught with a little bit of difficulty for you and the stress that may cause you, and also for the child. So I think it's before you start really preparing, gathering your specialist team, looking at maybe making a list of foods that might be the good foods that you want to try first, and really sort of immersing yourself in some webinars like this and some literature or knowledge that you can have before you get started with foods, because it can be easy to do the wrong thing when you're trying to work on eating, and you really want to make sure that those first experiences that your child has eating something new are really positive experiences. So we spiral up instead of spiraling down when we're doing it. So one of the things I would do is prepare your specialist team. And I will acknowledge, as I'm saying this, that getting specialists who have wait lists, and also the quality of different specialists is obviously on everybody's mind. But if you have access to some of these people, it's really valuable. First off would be a pediatrician or a medical specialist who can look at things like your child's gut and making sure that they're not constipated and that there's no physical barriers to eating different foods. Sometimes families will work with a dietitian or a nutritionist, sorry, and they can be really helpful because it may be many months before your child's food repertoire expands. So while we're waiting for that, we can look at supplements or different nutrients that the child might be comfortable accepting, just to make sure that they're getting all the nutrients they need to grow and be healthy and get enough sleep and everything. I would also look at a speech pathologist and a behavior consultant, and they look at sort of different aspects of eating. A behavior consultant will look at how to motivate and set up a child for success and what the rules are, and sort of how to break down some of those rules about eating. And a speech pathologist, particularly if they have a specialization in swallowing and feeding, will look at the mechanics of how your child is sort of accessing food as well. So that's an important first step. We would always talk to families about you really should rule out any medical concerns. We don't want to have children that are gagging or choking on food. So really make sure that you do that first.
So where do you start once you do all that? I know it can be really overwhelming doing a lot of that stuff, but where should you start?
Yeah, and start with the medical check. And I've realized these are numbered 1, 1, and 1. And I think that's okay because they're all a priority. So I'd say all of these things are things that we would do at the same time. So reassuring yourself that it's safe to work on eating new foods. And then I would start with working on foundational skills that are not at dinner time. They're not related to food at all. And that's really building the skills your child has that you're going to then apply to food. It's also building your confidence in making sure that you can interact with your child in order to help them when it gets to food as well. So things like, first we're going to do this, and then we're going to do that. So first we'll play with this toy, and then you can play with that toy, and getting that idea of we might do that when we get to food. So first have a little bit of a look at the chicken nugget, and then you can have some of the chips. Have a little smell of the yogurt, and then you can have that. But we do that with other activities away from food. Mm-hmm. We might also help your child just be more flexible in general, help them be comfortable with things being a little bit different to usual, and make sure that they've got the sort of the coping skills and they feel comfortable with that. We might also need to work on some other mealtime behaviours with their preferred foods as well. So can you sit at the table and eat the ice cream, but sort of stay at the table so that when we get to try new foods, you're already there and you're content to stay and be part of a meal. And then just also working on the foundations of mealtime should be a positive experience. So how do we make those fun and light, not too heavy, not too pressured? We really want to create a really nice vibe around eating so that when the child comes to meal times, they're looking forward to it. And there's not that sort of overlay of like, this is going to be hard or this is going to feel pressured. And the third number one priority would be deciding on the goals. So really thinking about what is the most likely and most important thing to work on, given the thousands of foods I could choose, what is going to be safe, what is really important for my child, and what is actually feasible, what is the most likely thing that my child may actually be willing to chew and swallow and accept. So sometimes to do that, I would start with making a bit of I love to just write all of the lists down and just say, okay, here's what my child will eat. Here's what they used to eat in the past that they don't eat anymore. Here are some things that are similar to what my child will eat. Here are some things they've shown interest in, but they haven't eaten on his brother or his sister's plate. And then really do that sort of mapping out of what's most likely. So I think I had 2 examples. In this one, the child's maybe eating blueberry flavored yogurt. and the mum or dad would like them to eat the same brand but strawberry, or the same brand but vanilla, or just blueberry yogurt in a different brand. We have a family at the moment who's looking to go to Hawaii, and all they want to do is make sure that their child will eat the same things but a different product, a different manufacturer of the same product, so that they can eat when they're overseas. So we might choose, okay, we're going to go with the same brand but strawberry for one child, or we're going to go with vanilla because it's less likely to have a flavor at all and it won't have any lumps in it or something like that.
Would you even go to the extent, Karen, of putting like vanilla, if they can get onto vanilla, and then putting fresh blueberries, or is that too much of a step at first?
It could be something to aim for, and it really does depend too of like, will the child accept anything that's textured? Because they may eat blueberries, but a flavor of blueberry is so different from the sensory experience of an actual blueberry. So they might be more likely to accept a different flavoring rather than a different texture. But it depends. It really depends. The same in the next example, actually. This is a child who currently eats pancakes with a banana flavor, blueberry yogurt, Weet Bix and nuggets, and the parents maybe want to increase the range of fruits that the child is eating. So do we go for grapes or strawberries or apples or banana? Or maybe we go for banana because the banana flavoring is actually already something that the child will accept, and strawberries have those little pips, and and apples can be a little bit tart or a little bit sour as well. So we're just sort of looking at, where does your child currently fall in terms of what they're willing to accept, and what's slightly out of the range of that versus way, way, way out of the range of that.
Yeah, and something that someone once told me when we were doing this with my son was, you get a punnet of great strawberries or blueberries, and the same taste isn't throughout that whole packet. And that can be really challenging, whereas like a nugget's a nugget, and the taste and the variety doesn't change, but within that bag of grapes, strawberries or blueberries, it can be so different from one blueberry to another.
Yeah, it really can. And I do really think that the guidance is you should start as close to the point where your child is already successful, and just open the dial up a little bit, and that is more likely to be palatable for the child.
Yeah, so true. Well, it can be really confusing when you've got friends and families that might have some picky eaters that are neurotypical, and they're not sort of experiencing picky or fussy eating like our autistic children. And you might get some well-meaning advice like, oh, they'll eat it if they're hungry, just put it in front of them. But what are the evidence-based approaches that the parents can look into?
Yeah, there's a few, and maybe I'll just start with how things have sort of changed as well, because I think, changed and not changed, maybe depending, but in the past there was probably a lot more pushing through with eating, whereas I think the model that is most accepted now, and there is some evidence behind it, is this approach called assent-based eating. So it took me a little while to kind of figure out that language, but basically, if you think of consent, where you're saying, I am saying yes to this, assent is the same thing, but for children who maybe can't verbalize that or sort of understand that to the level that an adult can. So assent for a child would be, if you show them the food, do they lean in because they want to eat it? If they push the food away, that is them withdrawing their assent and saying, no, I don't want that. So a lot of the strategies that I'm talking about from here on are based on assent-based practices. There are really big family and cultural differences in the way that we approach eating. There are some cultures where making sure that children have a lot of food is really important culturally, that's the way that people show love. There are others where the philosophy might be, just force them to do it and make sure that it happens. There are others where they might say, well, they'll eat when they want to, and, they won't go hungry, that kind of thing. So we sort of acknowledge that there's different perspectives that you come into this with, and probably for parents, different pressures on them from family members and outsiders as well. But the strategies I'll talk to you about today really are based on getting your child's buy-in to do this, rather than really going sort of forcefully into eating. So the first one is that SOS approach. which again, I've got the links to in the resource pack that we've prepared. This has a lot of evidence behind it. If that's important to you, there's lots of research that shows that this is really helpful for autistic children as well as other picky eaters. What I've found, though, is that you need to have a specialist who's really good at that. Kids can get to the point where they are so their SOS approach basically is just getting more comfortable with food being around, bringing foods in a very, very gradual manner. And eventually the child is so comfortable that they will just accept eating that food. And that approach is a lovely, supportive, very humane way to do it. Sometimes we get stuck on the border of, okay, he'll lift the food up, he'll sniff the food, but he won't put the food in his mouth. Yeah. So we really need specialists who are very, very good at this to know how to overcome that hurdle and get through that step, because that's where it tends to fall down in this approach and also in other approaches as well. It's just getting stuck at that hurdle of, if I can just get one little mouthful in his mouth, he'll know that it tastes really good and maybe it will come from there. But that's one approach that families could explore. Another approach is, I'm going to call it gradual exposure, but basically it's just about, similar to SOS, it's just about getting your child to be comfortable with food that they don't like being around, but in a very systematic manner. So we would, over a number of weeks maybe, have the food, let's say it was a pancake. Broccoli. Broccoli wouldn't be first on my list. No. Let's say it was a different brand of chicken nuggets, actually, because some parents will say, my child will eat nuggets from McDonald's, but all I want to do is make like a healthy version of them at home, or I can use my own breadcrumbs and my own oil and everything and just have them eat the same at home. So let's say it was that. So you might start with preparing a small amount of that and having it on the table, but a long way away from the child, and just making sure that they know that they're safe. Like, this is just going to stay here. For those children who understand language, you could be saying, like, you don't have to eat that. Don't worry about that. That's just going to stay over there. And you just carry on with eating your own meal. And systematically, over time, you bring the food closer and closer until it's at the point that it's maybe on the plate with the other foods that your child will eat. And then eventually you get to, we're going to lift it up, we're going to have a smell of it, we're going to pull it apart, you might lick your fingers and chipping away at it. At one point you have, like, okay, we'll lick it, we'll take a little bite, okay, now we're going to take a bigger bite, and then we move from there. Again, lots and lots of research with this. It is a slow, methodical process. So you have to be patient, know that your child is not going to eat new foods overnight, but it's a very supportive, very effective approach. Another one that we often pair with that approach is using that first and then, which is what we had talked about at the start, preparing this away from food and then starting to build motivation in for the child. So if your child absolutely adores chips, and you are practicing working on eating homemade nuggets, we might say, okay, first we're going to lick the nugget and then you can have a chip. And you might have these on 2 plates. So you slide one in, slide one out. But you can pair this approach with the approach before, where you just help. It's just basically a little booster of motivation that helps us, like, okay, it's worth my while. If I just do this tiny little thing, then I can have a few more chips. And it just makes it in a playful manner, just makes it a little more likely that your child might make that decision. And then also alongside that is the next approach, which is pairing. Where you bring in other activities unrelated to the food that your child enjoys. So we've had kids where we're bringing in the banana yogurt, they only eat blueberry, Cocomelon is on, trains are there. They have all of the different, like, spinny things and visuals and lava lamps and everything, just to make it be like this really positive experience, so that when that food is presented, the association or the memory of it is like, this is fun when this food comes out. Again, just trying to increase the likelihood that your child may be willing and in the right kind of frame of mind to try and jump that hurdle of tasting that food.
Oh, some really great strategies there, Karen. Thank you.
Thank
What
you.
about blending and mixing? And so if you've got someone that can eat certain foods, how do you then, like you say, blend and mix and add to their existing palate?
Yeah, and this one comes with a caution because it is something that we can do and families will often do. Like I know families that are so creative where they've got like a whole broccoli in the gravy that like you can't even see or smell it, that you would never know that vegetables were in there. It only comes with a caution because you do run the risk of your child then rejecting both foods.
Mm.
So if let's say you're adding water to juice because you want to introduce water and your child will only drink apple juice, some children can notice the difference and then will reject that and then will sort of lose trust in you to present foods in the way that they know and expect and love. So sometimes this works and sometimes it doesn't. I think if you were trying this for the first time, you would want to make the change so small that is undetectable and really, really go very systematically through that. And just the warning that sometimes children will then reject both foods. So I'd be very cautious about that.
Good to know. How do you add veggies to pasta sauce if your kid won't eat pasta or pasta sauce? Asking for a friend.
Yeah, well, it's like, which one do you work on first, right?
Yeah.
Because maybe adding veggies to pasta sauce, maybe you got to get your veggies into. Like, people are so clever. Like in the crumb mix, they'll add in, the
Oh,
cheese
wow.
and it's so incredible what people will be able to do. But yeah, pasta sauce, some kids don't like it. Some kids will have more of a butter sauce and not a red sauce. And
Yeah.
pasta, even just the different types of pasta, and if it's not cooked perfectly well. And it's amazing to think of what children will reject. And I always think of like, where has this come from? Like, what made you not want to have that? Why does that feel not safe to you? But yeah, you're probably going for something else if they're not eating veggies or pasta or sauce.
Thanks, Karen. So you said before that there's real big rules around do's and don'ts when parents are trying to introduce new foods. What are they?
Yeah, I mean, I think some of the do's are really about setting yourself up for success. I just, again, will acknowledge it's a really stressful thing when your child isn't eating the foods that you feel they need to get enough nutrition to thrive. So it's hard to step away from that when you're feeling such urgency about it. So a lot of the do's are thinking about how to do this sort of very mindfully in a manner that is going to be the most likely to lead to success. So when I'm stressed and frustrated, that is not the best version of me when I'm with my kids. So it's really trying to figure out how and when can I do this so that it goes well, it feels good, we are spiraling up instead of spiraling down, just really setting yourself up for success. So some of those things is going back to those foundational skills. What can you do away from food that's going to help you when it gets to a mealtime? Doing it when you feel calm, when other people feel calm. If you have pressure from other people in your family, maybe we don't do it at that time when they're there. Getting the help you need from specialists. Celebrating the small wins is so important because it may be months before your child eats a whole chicken nugget, but if they sniff it for the first time or they touch it to their lip, even if it doesn't get on their tongue, that is a step in the right direction, and that is you are one step closer to the goal that you have. So really, really celebrating those wins, even though it feels ridiculous to be saying my child sniffed a chicken nugget. It's like, that's a win, baby. Like, we really should celebrate that. The other thing is just to think about food intake and nutrition across a whole day or a week. So children will fluctuate, and we can get caught up in each meal the child needs to eat a whole range of foods or needs to have the right volume. But actually across the day, as long as you're sort of getting some of the nutrients that you need, that's okay. So they may wax and wane in terms of the amount they eat or the type they eat, but sort of see that bigger picture for them. And then really prioritizing the things that are most likely to lead to success over the things that you desperately want, I think, is my advice there. So go for the things where you're going to get a win on the board, and see those other things that is your sort of ideal wish list as later on, because we are going for momentum here with trying to just get something that's new and then build on that over time. And my advice in terms of the don'ts would be, don't force it. It's not a good experience for the child if we really are pushing through things. And if your child is really upset about that, I'd kind of regroup and reset and come back to that at another time. So both, this is really, if the child is upset or if you're frustrated, I would step away from it in that moment and try it again later.
Yeah. Such sound practical advice and strategies. I'm glad that it's recorded because I've got lots of notes that I want to make. So thanks, Karen. This now opens up our Q&A portion of our webinar. There is some questions in the Q&A. A reminder, if you have any, put your questions in the Q&A and Karen will do her best to answer. Let's have a look what we've got. So we've got
so many questions. Thank you.
I know, so many. Which one do you want to tackle first?
Okay, there's one here about sugary foods, maybe just a child whose preference, it sounds like a daughter is 3.5 years old, recently diagnosed with autism, picky eater, and really prefers the sugary stuff. So where do I start? So that, I'm sure there are a lot of people at home or in their car nodding about that, because it's really common for kids to either only like the sort of crunchy carby foods or only like the sort of sugar heavy food. So I think starting with variety is still the way to go. So changing the different foods that maybe still have that higher sugar content and practicing in a way, eating new foods that are going to be successful for that child as a first step. And then I think you are scaling down instead of going for absolutely zero sugar. So if, let's say, as an example, if your child is really into chocolate, then maybe we are looking at something that is chocolate flavored, but perhaps it's a chocolate flavored yogurt, for example. So it's going to have less sugar, but not zero sugar, and then stepping down from there. But I would start with just getting variety, and then you can sort of massage it into things that are a little bit lower over time. For other kids, you can use that first we'll do this and then we'll do that. So first eat this food and then you can have that food. But often I think, what's the most likely thing that I can get away with here? And then I'd start with that. Nick, did you have another question that you wanted to prioritize?
I think so. Yeah, there's a question about, what if your child refuses to eat the catered food at daycare? I know that we had this problem with my son, and the question says he only eats plain rice or plain pasta, even if it has meat that he liked to eat at home. For example, beef stroganoff at home, yum, yum, but not at daycare.
Yeah, that's tricky too. And I think, again, very common for families. So there's a couple of ways that you can approach that. One is an avoidance strategy and one is a sort of tackling strategy. So one thing that families will do is actually try and load their kids up for breakfast and then sort of a snack in the car, and make sure that your child has high volumes of food before and after childcare. You obviously want your child to eat something during the day. Some childcare centres will allow you to bring in a snack that maybe is one of your child's like higher level, really preferred foods. Some childcare centres won't, but at least you know you are bookending childcare with high volume foods that are going to sustain your child for most of the day. Some families have come in and sat with their child and helped them. They're sort of like the bridge between the two worlds. So the child may not eat with the educators at childcare, but mum or dad can come in and actually they will eat if mum or dad is there. And so that's worked sometimes. And sometimes, yeah, childcare centres have been a little bit open to us having other foods there as well, or preparing foods that are a little bit plainer that a child may eat. So there's a few workarounds there. It is really tricky though, I think, because you can't always be present to make that go well. And sometimes as a parent, oh, if you just cut the sandwich that way instead of that way, they would be likely to do it. Or if that rice was cooked like this and not that, it would be more likely. So perhaps it's a conversation with your educators to see what they would be willing to do to help too.
Yeah, great response. Here's another one for tips for older teens with autism that are very resistant, also uses ketchup, tomato sauce on everything, which the parent would like to reduce.
Yeah, I mean, I think when you are an older teen, you are starting to make some choices for yourself around the foods that you eat. So that's going through my mind a little bit of, that those sort of guiding questions of, is it safe? Is it important? And is it feasible? Is on my mind. Something like reducing sauce may be a priority or may not be a priority, depending on the other foods that person eats. I think depending on how much you can kind of sit and engage with that teen in a conversation, there's really got to be a little bit of desire from a child of that age to want to try new foods. Because as I was saying before, even with the younger children now, we don't have those strategies where we can make that happen. We can't force children to eat. So it's really about them participating in the process. I have a 14-year-old and I'm middle of that right now in terms of making sure that she eats vegetables across the day. So if your child is nonverbal or isn't communicating that well, I think it's probably, again, just about that respectful way of moving towards them being more likely through motivation strategies and through that sort of very nice, strong pairing practice where you make it a good, fun environment.
Yeah. Maybe one last one. How do I move from grazing to set meal times?
Oh, good question. So that would be, I'm going to answer that in two ways. For some families, continuing to be a grazing family is okay. So I absolutely respect that families may access food over time in that way. But should you want to work on something like grazing and set meal times, the very practical way that I would do that is start to delay snack by a certain amount of seconds or minutes. And practice the skill of waiting. So if I was to look at a very practical example, I'm just going to speak about it with a child that I have in mind. It may or may not suit the person who asked the question. But if the child was approaching the cupboard and was grabbing out a biscuit, I would say, yes, you can have that biscuit. Let me stick a picture here. And then we're just going to wait for the timer. And then when the timer goes off, oh, there's that biscuit for you. And as the child practices that and learns that that's okay and that the biscuit is still coming, you can increase the amount of time until you get to the point where there are a snack and then a mealtime, a snack and then a mealtime across the day. So that's if you want to move towards having proper meal times. As I said, some families don't prioritize that, which is completely fine, but that has been very successful very quickly for children that do graze a lot.
Some great tips there, Karen. Thank you. Unfortunately, we have gone over time. I think we could stay here for hours talking about food and fussy eating and answering everyone's questions. So we do thank you for your time and your really great questions in the Q&A. We hope you got lots out of this discussion and hope that you all feel more empowered and confident when, it comes to the tricky time of fussy eating and feeding our autistic kids. If you are looking for additional resources, like Karen said, Autism Partnership have put together this fantastic Navigating Fussy Eating Extra Information and Resources booklet. You could scan the QR code on your screen now to get that, or you'll get a link to it in the follow-up email. If your child has been recently diagnosed, Autism Partnership is also running another free webinar where they'll talk about how to understand the diagnosis, how to possibly support your child in navigating through those next steps. And as with everything, Autism Partnership gives some really practical evidence-based information and resources to help you along the way. So again, you can scan that QR code that's on your screen and you'll also get it in the follow-up email. As Karen mentioned, Autism Partnership are located in Melbourne, Sydney and Brisbane, and they've got some open days for their Little Learners programs. And these programs are for children aged 2 to 6. In Melbourne, they'll be open on the 21st of October, Sydney, 21st of October, and Brisbane on the 18th of November. Again, you can have a look at that. More information on the QR code on your screen now. If you want other information around autism, please follow us on all of our social media platforms on the screen there, or on our website, autismawareness.com.au. We've really been thankful for you joining today, Karen. Thank you for your time and all your sound advice, strategies. It will be recorded and it will be sent out, so you can go back and reference all the great evidence-based strategies you've shared with us today. So I'll just keep that up on the screen in the meantime for a few more minutes so people can jot that down. But we thank you again for joining us, and have a great rest of your day. Thanks again, Karen.
Thank you. And thanks everyone for your great questions. I'm going to stay on and look through them and make sure that I get back to anyone where they have other questions. Thank you.